Okay, next we have LSU, maybe one of the more interesting teams in the SEC West this year. Their win total set at 6.5 or 7, depending where you look. 6-7 a year ago, obviously 3-5 in conference. Tough year a year ago, losing their head coach, firing him, and then he still stays on that whole situation.
Hmm.
Brian Kelly, his first season here. Last year, they were the number 58 team in the country per F plus, 64 on offense, 50 on defense. You can kind of throw that out just because of the weird season it was. And same with the projections. The projections, I'll just share them. They're number 36 in the country, 47 on offense, 27 on defense. Don't put a lot of stock in that just because it's all of those are affected by what happened last year, and it's just really hard to put a lot of stock into last year's LSU team. But let's talk about this year's. Brian Kelly, the head coach. Everyone talks about the strange fit, or then the other side is a good fit means winning, and that'll happen. And yeah, we've heard all of that. Let's talk about the actual team. The quarterback will probably be either. I mean, okay, it will be either Jaden Daniels or Garrett Nussmeier. We saw that. I'm sorry,
Miles Brennan.
Miles Brennan retired after kind of losing that job.
Yeah.
So you have a couple good options here. You think you also have the true freshman 5-star. And yeah, I think that I've mentioned it with several other teams. Like it does feel like they have a couple good options. I don't know that they're going to get spectacular quarterback play, but it feels like there's at least a decent floor. The running back John Emery Jr. is really good. I think he'll be solid this year. Keishawn Butte, and apparently it might actually be pronounced Booty from what we heard recently.
It's Butte. Everyone knows it's
Okay.
always been that. Like he's been around for a couple of years now. We know how to pronounce his name. I did hear that as well. I heard that as well. And I was like, yeah, I think it was like a reporter that actually called him that, I believe.
Okay.
I think a reporter actually called him that. So yeah, that's trying to get the names right here, guys.
So Keishawn Butte leads a really good wide receiver core. He's the headliner, but there's other guys there that are really good as well. He's going to be the future first round pick.
Yeah.
He's the stud. We all know him. Their offensive line to me is the huge question mark of the offense. And I know just from reading some LSU fan boards, like one of the huge asks they have of Brian Kelly, who usually had good offensive lines at Notre Dame, is that he does the same at LSU. And you feel like they always recruit receiver well. They have two studs already committed for next year. You're always going to have receiving play. You're going to have running backs. Recently, they've started recruiting quarterback quite a bit better. The question is, will you have a good offensive line? And if you have a good offensive line, you're going to do things on offense at LSU. The defensive line, on the other hand, is an absolute strength of the team, led by Mason Smith and BJ Ojolari, kind of the interior player, and then also the pass rusher. Like those are some big names, and those are studs. They're going to have a really good defensive line. They're okay at linebacker. You have guys like Mike Jones, who used to play for Clemson, second season now at LSU, and there's a couple other guys that maybe have even passed him up. I feel like they're going to be solid. I don't know they'll be great. The question mark on defense for me is the secondary.
Of course.
They
lost everyone. They
lost everybody. I think, okay, we're all used to seeing LSU, like the secondary is supposed to be the strength of their team, especially the cornerbacks. I think they're going to be uncharacteristically leaky this year. Now, what I didn't say was that they're going 4-8. That's not what I said. I do think that they will have issues with the secondary. So to me, there's two major question marks in this team. It's the offensive line and it's the secondary. Mm-hmm. I like a lot of the rest of their team. The problem is I also like a lot of the rest of the SEC West. And it's going to be like, we're going to have a lot of really good games this year in the SEC West. Like there's just teams 2 through 7, anybody can beat anybody, I think. If you look at their schedule, obviously opening with Florida State, technically a neutral site game. Yeah, that's in New Orleans. That's their first game. And they play Southern, Mississippi State, New Mexico, and then UAB. So the non-con is pretty easy. I think Florida State and UAB, like those are ones you actually have to like. Those are tough. They're games that LSU should be clearly favored in, but they can't just like. They actually have to prepare for those games, and they should be fun. Their conference schedule, on the other hand, is pretty tough, and I feel like I'm vamping because I don't really know what to expect.
Okay.
What do you expect from LSU this year?
Yeah, let me take over here. I am an LSU believer this year. I think what LSU always needed was stability. I think when you had Coach O there was a lot of talent there. Obviously, it was one of the greatest teams of all time in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lot of it was unstable. There was a lot of divisiveness used kind of in that locker room. I think it was loose. It was very yeah, it was kind of just disconnected, discombobulated. But I
Mm-hmm.
think I the thing about Kelly, I think he's really good at bringing organization and bringing a plan and having a plan that hey, like this is us. This is what we're going to try to do this Saturday. We don't have a plan 2 and 3. It's just this one. Like we're all on the same page. I think he can do that. I think he can do that well. And in the world of transfer portal stuff, I think all the guys that wanted to leave are gone. Like I think the ones that are there are, I think they're bought in. I think, yeah, they're still talent at LSU. They lost a
Sure.
lot of guys. They lost a lot of dudes, but in the blue chip ratio, which I know you're a big fan of,
Mm-hmm.
that Bud Elliott puts out, just kind of compiling all the teams, they're still number 7 on that list.
Sure.
They're ahead of teams like Clemson, Notre Dame, Florida, Michigan. I I believe in, I do. You can call me whatever you want to call me. I believe in LSU this year. I think Jaden Daniels has kind of won that job. I do feel kind of the whisperings that you're yeah, that you hear and that you
Yeah.
try to pick up on is that he's the clear number 1 at least right now, unless something happens. He will probably be the guy come week 1 against Florida State at its neutral site game. It's in New Orleans. That is a home game. Make no mistake. That is a home
Mm-hmm.
game for LSU. Um, I think LSU gets off to a good start. I think LSU continues to play well. I think they go over their number. I think they surprise people this year. I'm all in. I'm buying all the LSU stock right now. I'm a fan. I'm a believer. Um, I think they'll be competitive. I think they're going to be competitive. I don't know if this is helping you make your mind at all, but LSU, they lost a lot of DBs you mentioned,
Right.
but DBs simply grow on trees in New Orleans, and they are DBU, and they will have more. They lost Eli Ricks, Stingley. You mentioned, I think it was
Dwight
Clark.
McGlothern.
McGlothern's gone. Clark is gone. They lost a lot of dudes. I think they're going to have some more guys. Is it a question mark? Absolutely. Is it going to be a strength of their defense? No, not right away. But they will have guys there that will mold into a unit. I really do believe that. So yeah, this is something I would be putting a couple of bucks on the LSU over. That's where I would be
Okay.
leaning this year. Fairly confident. This is not my most confident pick, but it is one of them. I feel good about LSU this year.
So clearly you're taking the 6.5 number going over.
Correct.
I'm going to take the 7 number and go under.
Okay.
There's a chance you could be right and I could push. I think that's not terribly unlikely.
Okay.
But you mentioned they're number 7 in the blue chip ratio. I wish it was a little more spread out on their roster.
Fair.
If their defensive line was a little worse and their receiving core was a little worse, I'd be okay with that if their offensive line and secondary were a little better.
Fair enough.
And I would feel pretty good about that. I do think that Brian Kelly was a very solid hire for what they needed. Like you kind of alluded to that. We talked about this a little bit with the Arkansas preview. There's something to be said for floor raisers.
Yes.
I don't think Brian Kelly is a ceiling raiser, but I think he's a floor raiser. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think he'll be I don't expect him to win a national title. What I expect is for him to coach for about 5 years at LSU and get them to a solid 10-2 type of area and then probably retire. And then the next guy will have an excellent place to start from. And maybe Nick Saban retires. Who knows? Like it could actually happen, people. There's always that possibility. So the one thing for this year, I do think it could take a year for the team to really look like what Brian Kelly wants it to look like. And I don't love their weaknesses when you compare to who they're having to face.
Sure.
Okay, just look at some of their toss-up games. You have Mississippi State. What
Yeah.
do? They pass the ball. You have Tennessee. What do? They pass the ball. You have Ole Miss. They pass and run the ball. They do some of both. You have Arkansas. They more running, but they also showed an ability to pass the ball last year.
Sure. Sure.
I'm concerned about their secondary. I don't know that they actually are growing on trees this year. Like they lost their top 3 corners,
They did.
and I think they'll be fine in a year or two. I really do. I think that Brian Kelly will get them to the point where we would laugh at the idea of going 7-5. I do think he will get them to that point. They're not there yet, and I do think there's maybe a few depth concerns too. But it's the offensive line, it's the secondary. Arrow up long term. This year, I'm going 6-6.
Okay, fair enough. When you say that you don't believe LSU will win a national championship under Kelly, I will remind you that Les Miles and Ed Orgeron won national championships at LSU. And then Saban obviously did before then. My point being is that there can be bad coaches that win championships at LSU.
Yeah, everyone says that, but you're competing with a bit of a different animal because Alabama has done nothing but get stronger, I feel, since LSU. Okay, so I guess the last one, LSU, yeah. I do think, yes, Ed Orgeron won a national title at LSU, but he did that with Joe Brady and Dave Aranda,
Yeah,
and then Joe Burrow and Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
I think maybe you and I could have led them to a national title that year.
No, I agree.
I'm just saying. I think it was a perfect storm of excellent hires. And
Yeah.
I think Kelly hired a pretty good staff. I don't think he has Dave Aranda and Joe Brady on it. Like
Fair
that's
enough.
just a little different.
Fair
You're
enough.
not going to see that again ever. That was a one time type of thing. I don't. He could win a national title there because, again, it's LSU. You can recruit like crazy. I don't think he's ever going to out recruit Nick Saban and Kirby Smart, and he's in the same conference as them.
Fair enough.